Mayo says, "I did not turn myself in and I did not come voluntarily to the United States."
Mark this, the Mexican government is complicit in these drug cartel organizations.
If I was a betting man, I'd bet on him getting away and getting away with this.
The cartel world was insanely shaken up when El Chapo's son, Joaquín Guzmán López, betrayed El Mayo Zambada. Those of you who follow the brutal tales of the Sinaloa Cartel know that this person is the legendary leader of the Sinaloa Cartel who has evaded capture for over half a century. So, how did he finally get arrested? Was this a calculated move by Guzmán, or did he unknowingly betray El Mayo, which went on to change the entire landscape of the narcotics trade? Stay tuned to find out the truth behind why El Chapo's son orchestrated El Mayo's brutal betrayal. Let's hear the story of how it all unfolded. On a fine morning in July 2024, Ismael El Mayo Zambada, the 76-year-old kingpin of the Sinaloa Cartel, sat on a private jet flying over northern Mexico. Despite his age and stature, he appeared relaxed, possibly due to his long-standing legal advantage or thinking that he was on his way to a routine business meeting. What he didn't know was that this flight was about to become the most important journey of his life, and possibly his last as a free man. El Mayo sat across from Joaquín Guzmán López, also known as El Güero, one of El Chapo's sons. Guzmán was fidgeting slightly and looking nervously around the cabin. El Mayo possibly saw it, but didn't say anything. He knew how to keep his emotions and expressions in control. As the plane landed, El Mayo looked out the window at the rugged terrain of Sinaloa, the state that gave birth to one of history's most powerful criminal organizations. He briefly smiled as the feeling of being home hit him strongly, but he didn't know that this smile would not stay on his face for too many moments. He arrived at a small airstrip and was expected to be greeted by local officials, possibly even the governor of Sinaloa, because he had specifically instructed them for it. Instead, he was confronted by a group of heavily armed men in tactical gear. They were hiding their faces behind masks, and their intentions were clear. They wanted El Mayo. El Mayo realized he'd been tricked and looked at Guzmán López, shocked and betrayed. However, before he could speak, armed men stormed the plane. "Ismael Zambada Garcia," one of them shouted, "you're under arrest." El Mayo was the cherry on top, said one U.S. official, who declined to be identified because he was not authorized to speak publicly about the arrests. It wasn't expected at all, and thus, El Mayo's reign ended abruptly and ingloriously. He fell into a trap in the complex world of cartel politics and family loyalties. But why was he targeted, and why did El Chapo's son want him out of the way? Well, to understand all this, we have to take a step back and look into the intricate history of the Sinaloa Cartel and El Mayo's journey with them. So, let's dive right in. The legendary narco lord El Mayo is not just any ordinary criminal. Ismael Zambada Garcia is a narco legend and has built and maintained a criminal empire undefeated for nearly half a century.
Mayo Zambada had been running the cartel for a number of years, and they have a very strong bench. Very good leaders.
And not only was El Mayo particularly gifted as a cartel leader, but he was also extremely elusive. No one had ever found him appearing in the public or had the chance to photograph him. It was as if he was born in the shadows and spent his entire life in the shadows.
We haven't really had a photo of this guy probably for 25 years.
Former DEA head Jack Riley believed that with his level of expertise, El Mayo could evade justice forever. Many didn't like his claims, but given his experience with narco lords, he was probably predicting the truth.
If I was a betting man, I'd bet on him getting away and getting away with this.
El Mayo was literally a chess master and a mastermind, but even the greatest can be outplayed by someone with a strong understanding of their game, such as his longtime partner, Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. In 2019, El Chapo was on trial in New York. During the proceedings, his defense team made a controversial claim that El Chapo was not the mastermind behind the Sinaloa Cartel, but it was El Mayo who pulled the strings.
El Chapo was basically put out there to have the spotlight so that he could cover for El Mayo Zambada.
El Chapo's lawyer claimed that the court hearing was a desperate attempt to shift blame, but some speculate it may have been El Chapo's message to his former partner. He wanted him to know that he was just as much in trouble as he was. Now let's come back to 2024. El Chapo's son, Joaquín Guzmán López, possibly took the message his father was sending him and turned on El Mayo. But now the question remains. What could he possibly attain by betraying one of the most influential criminals in the underworld? The Sinaloa Cartel's dynamics is partially responsible for this move by Guzmán López, which changed after El Chapo's arrest and extradition. A power struggle took place between El Mayo and his faction, and Los Chapitos, El Chapo's sons, including Guzmán López. The whole rife started to shake the core of the Sinaloa Cartel and even put their trade at stake.
Themselves too much. And the Chapitos, like their father, they like the glory, they like being glorified in narco corridos, and the spotlight is on them.
El Mayo's low-key approach caused tension within the cartel, and the old guard clashed with the new blood of Los Chapitos. Guzmán López had to be smart in taking on El Mayo, because he had deep connections that could bring him out of any trouble in case things went south between him and the Chapitos. As a result, both the factions would be destroyed in seconds. So, instead of going for a full-on clash, the Chapito turned El Mayo over to authorities. The move made him appear as a hero. At the same time, he prevented the factions from dying. As the final act of this plan, in July 2024, El Mayo was handcuffed and taken away. But that was not the end of it. The shocker came when he learned that Guzmán López, the man who set him up, was also being arrested.
How did the son of an imprisoned drug lord end up on a private plane in El Paso, Texas?
It appeared as the perfect plan. Guzmán López did not only turn in El Mayo, but also himself. And it surprised many. He chose to surrender himself, rather than allowing authorities to take El Mayo and leave scot-free. His decision definitely raised eyebrows. Why did he do this? What game was he actually playing? Well, here's where it gets interesting. Experts suggest that Guzmán López, along with El Mayo, may have been playing a longer game, a major part of which was to turn himself in to the U.S. authorities.
The fact that they went through the effort of bringing him here to be prosecuted would suggest that Guzmán has arranged for or is hoping for some sort of lenient treatment by the U.S. authorities.
As Guzmán López was the son of El Chapo and a high-ranking member of the Sinaloa Cartel, he possessed a wealth of valuable information relating to the world of narcotics cartels. And in this industry, possessing information is paramount. Now, as soon as El Mayo was arrested, his lawyer accused the DEA and said that they'd kidnapped his client. He stuck to this claim from start to finish.
El Mayo says, I did not turn myself in and I did not come voluntarily to the United States, nor did I have an agreement with either government. To the contrary, I was kidnapped and brought to the U.S. forcefully and against my will.
He added that his client was attacked and taken away by force.
He also says he was ambushed by a group of men who assaulted him, adding he was subjected to physical abuse and forced into a private plane that came straight to El Paso, where U.S. federal authorities were waiting for him and Joaquín Guzmán López.
El Mayo reportedly detailed how he was ambushed, thrown to the ground, and handcuffed by 6 men from his cartel. They tied his legs, placed a black bag over his head, and forced him onto a plane. He gestured for me to follow him, Zambada said in his statement, adding that, trusting those involved, he followed without hesitation. I was led into another room which was dark. As soon as I set foot inside of that room, I was ambushed, Zambada continued. But if this is true, it also hints at the fact that someone from his own cartel wanted him out of the way and orchestrated the ambush and kidnapping. However, eyewitnesses claim that El Mayo might not have been in danger, as he claimed. One worker at the Dona Ana County International Jetport, near El Paso, told Reuters he saw a Beechcraft King airplane land on Thursday afternoon on the runway, where federal agents were already waiting. 2 individuals got off the plane and were calmly taken into custody, said the man, who declined to share his name out of concern for his safety. But you know what's wild? The Mexican government is accusing the U.S. Department of Justice of betrayal, claiming that they didn't know anything about El Mayo's abduction. They're now demanding answers from the U.S. authorities on how a Mexican citizen ended up in American custody without following proper legal procedures.
It's interesting. It appears that Mexican authorities had no role in any of this operation. They have said so publicly. And seem to be scrambling for information about what happened, just like everyone else. You know, the U.S. has worked hand in hand over the years with Mexico, but that relationship has become more difficult over the years.
Well, after this very exhausting blame game, it appears that the U.S.-Mexico law enforcement operation lacks cooperation. This raises questions about the legitimacy of the operation. Why didn't the U.S. authorities keep the Mexican authorities informed? And since they didn't, was this operation even legit? Experts suggest that the operation in Mexico may have been part of a larger power play within the Mexican government, as El Mayo claims he was led to believe he was meeting with Sinaloa Governor Ruben Rocha Moya to discuss future operations. This shows that behind closed doors, there is a level of high-level cooperation between these two parties that stretch beyond the norms in typical law enforcement operations. And sadly, there have been many attempts to bring this to light to date, and all attempts have been unsuccessful.
Mark this. The Mexican government is complicit in these drug cartel organizations, no question about it.
The claim that El Mayo was removed due to corruption in Mexican law enforcement and politics is not entirely accurate. It is possible that certain government factions saw him as a liability and decided to remove him, or it was a genuine attempt by honest officials to bring down El Mayo. And so far, these are the only two logical possibilities. Needless to say, the arrest of Mayo Zambada has sparked a plethora of questions about the relationship between cartels, governments, and law enforcement on both sides of the border. Although we may never know the full story, but it seems like they wanted to capture him for a long time. The US authorities had a $15 million reward for the capture of Zambada, who co-founded the Sinaloa Cartel in the late 1980s with El Chapo. Guzmán López had a $5 million bounty on his head. Both men face multiple indictments in the United States. But the biggest impact of this incident, the arrest of El Mayo, has raised concerns about the potential fallout of the Sinaloa Cartel, as there are numerous ambitious underlings ready to take over and claim the throne.
The concern is, however, that when you take out a top kingpin like this, that it creates a power vacuum and that there's fighting to sort of fill that and fill their shoes. We saw that after Chapo's capture.
Experts are predicting that El Mayo's arrest could signal the start of a cartel war, making previous conflicts seem like silly high school rivalries. And it is clear that this is more bad news than good news. The Sinaloa Cartel's influence extends beyond Mexico, with potential for violence in cities like Chicago, Atlanta, and New York, as different factions vie for control of distribution networks.
Now we have open borders, and despite the most recent executive action, the cartels, the open borders have enabled the cartels to become the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. They are making billions and billions, and the open border did nothing but enable them. And they have infiltrated into the United States even more so than they did before. And there's no way to put this toothpaste back in the tube. So
was this a masterstroke by the DEA, a betrayal from within the cartel, or something even more sinister? So, how does this arrest play out? What are the after effects? The fall of El Mayo in Mexico has significant implications for the narco world, as the ripple effects of his arrest are likely to be felt beyond Mexico's borders. A war is brewing, and everyone can feel it in their bones. This type of power vacuum created after a kingpin's arrest is often filled quickly and violently, and not by strangers, but by the cartel's own people. There are quite a few contenders for the throne, and people are placing bets for their favorites. El Mayo's departure from the cartel leaves the question of who will replace him: Los Chapitos, the sons of El Chapo, or rival organizations looking to take control of Sinaloa territory. Well, the outcome depends on the incident of his sudden arrest.
Why prepare? Because it's not clear what happened. There could be a different response from criminal groups if it was a surrender or a betrayal between cells of the same cartel.
Former FBI official Chris Swecker predicts that there will be a significant increase in violence in North America, which can reshape the entire organized crime landscape, not just a temporary surge.
I mean, typically, when you make a high-level arrest like this is one of the top leaders of the Sinaloa Cartel, El Chapo's organization. Things tend to get violent, even more violent than they are normally, and violence is the norm in Mexico. So when you take off a top cartel leader, the other leaders start vying for power, rivals start to move in, and it gets extremely bloody.
The arrest of El Mayo also raises questions about the state of law enforcement in Mexico. How could El Mayo be abducted without them knowing anything about it? Why were they so lax that something so grand just happened under their noses and they weren't able to take any steps to prevent it? Or at least ask the US authorities to adopt legal procedures to go forth with their plans. Additionally, the US government's involvement in El Mayo's kidnapping raises questions about their complicity in the situation. Did they know what they were doing was illegal? Did they really agree to be a part of an illegal international kidnapping? From what it seems, their move could potentially impact US-Mexico relations and worsen it in the upcoming days, and the effects have already started to show. The Mexican government is unhappy about a citizen being taken across the border, and President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has demanded full transparency from the US about the operation. He also expressed his dissatisfaction with the situation on the diplomatic stage. As El Mayo claims, he was led to believe he was meeting with a governor, and this shows that there might have been high-level cooperation beyond typical law enforcement operations.
Those volumes of money that are associated with the drug traffic coming through a relatively, a still developing country like Mexico, it does create enormous distortions in the system. And so in that sense, a trajectory of escalating violence, increasing corruption, a direct challenge to political authority.
As it appears, the deep reach of cartels blurred the line between criminals and government officials. Would you believe that at its peak, the Sinaloa Cartel was responsible for smuggling 25% of all illegal narcotics entering the US from Mexico? In August 2024, more shocking links to this arrest came out. The Mexico Attorney General's office announced that they suspected Ovidio Guzmán, son of El Chapo, to be involved in the arrest and abduction of El Mayo. But as far as we know, Ovidio was already in police custody in the US, right? Well, official records seem to disagree. Reportedly, Guzmán was extradited to the United States in September 2023, but has been listed as released by the U.S. Bureau of Prisons as of July 23rd. However, the U.S. authorities quickly came forward to refute these claims. U.S. Ambassador Ken Salazar stated a day after the arrest that El Chapo's son was still in the U.S. prison system. I can confirm that Ovidio Guzmán López remains in custody in the United States, he said in a statement, without elaborating on the details. But if the claims made by the Mexican authorities are true, we might have more shocking twists ahead in this case. So, with half of their leaders gone, what happens to the Sinaloa Cartel's trades? Experts suggest that El Mayo's arrest may not significantly change or impact the Sinaloa Cartel's operations. The cartel is not merely made up of El Mayo. The entire organization is, in fact, well established and has decades of experience.
The rule of law, but I don't think that they will have any significant impact on the inner workings of the Sinaloa Cartel. And as an example, I will give to you exactly what happened when the leader of the Sinaloa Cartel, Chapo Guzmán, was extradited to the United States. Had no impact.
But we can't deny the fact that the Sinaloa Cartel will face some internal conflict. The rival cartels might claim their territory. New leaders will try to run the business their way, which might impact the profit or even the processes. And the worst part of it all is these turbulent times with potential repercussions can spread beyond Mexico's borders and disrupt the industry. The situation may escalate into the US in unexpected ways, making it even more concerning. El Mayo Zambada's fall is the end of a kingpin's reign and marks the beginning of a new era in the narcotics trade. The future for the Sinaloa Cartel is uncertain. What's next? Well, it may involve cartel violence or a radical new approach to the war on narcotics. So, what do you think about El Chapo's son betraying El Mayo? Let us know in the comments below. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe if you haven't already.